Yes,
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, sweet.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think it was connection on my end. It's something we definitely need to figure out. Like, what's the best internet provider when you're going live on YouTube? But yeah, sorry about that. So, in case what I mentioned was not being heard, I guess I can just go over it again. So, but first, I'd like to welcome our guests who we have today. So, I'd like to welcome Gerard, software developer at the Zig. We have Isaac, a software developer from Black Dot Media, and we have our very own Sambwa. And I hope I know she's a software developer. The location though, Sambwa, maybe you want to hop in.
Really, Wilfred? You know where I work.
Sambwa, are you there?
Hello?
Yeah, she's there.
Can you hear me?
Hey, Sambwa.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
We can.
Okay, yeah, I'm a software developer for CBU IBIC.
CBU, sweet. So yeah, welcome, our guests. Maybe I can just go over what the virtual meetup today is all about, and then quickly have our guests hop in. So the meetup that we're having today is on Hacktoberfest, which is a month-long hackathon on open source. So if you're new to open source, it's basically a way for you to use code which is free for you to copy or free for you to extend. So it's not code that is closed from the public that you can't access. Like, for example, say how the iOS apps are built on the, like, from Apple. So it's free for you to extend, free for you to learn how it works. So if you want to contribute to open source, this is a great opportunity for you to learn how to start contributing to open source. Right. So I'll maybe just ask our guests to also give their version of what is open source. So, Jared, how's your what do you think of what open source is?
Sure. Thanks, Wilfred. So yeah, open source is just source code that is publicly accessible. You can modify it. You can learn from it and do whatever you want with it. It's not hidden from the public. So as long as it's open source, as long as it's public and you can access it, that's basically what open source is about.
Sweet. Right on the money. So yeah, that's what open source is. So of course we need to also tell some of the people listening is that how can they participate in this sort of competition. So the Hacktoberfest is online, it's virtual, so you don't need to go to a certain location. All you have to do is submit 4 pull requests to the open source project that you'd like to contribute to, and they have to be valid. So for you to find those open source projects, we're going to, of course, discuss about how you can find those open source projects. And we're going to share links in the description of more details about Hacktoberfest. Okay, so maybe from Isaac would like to also, maybe let's have Isaac join us as well. So Isaac, how does someone submit a pull request, or how does someone go about a pull request on open source software?
So basically, when it comes to open source software, you can contribute to it in a number of ways. One of the most common ones is finding issues on GitHub. So when you go to GitHub, you'll find repositories that you can publicly access. So those ones which you can publicly access, it means they're open source. Basically, you can contribute to them. There's a part on one of the tabs on top that says issues. Through one of the issues, you can find something that you're familiar with that you can contribute to. In this example, since we're in Hacktoberfest month, basically, they have a list of all repositories that are open on GitHub that you can contribute to. And these repositories have to have a tag that says, or a label that says Hacktoberfest. But there's a rule that says, the rules have changed this time around. Last year, anyone could contribute to any repo. It didn't have to have the label that said Hacktoberfest. Even if it didn't have, the pull request that you made did count. So how you make a pull request is you fork a copy of whatever repository that you want to contribute to. You have your own copy on your machine. Maintainers encourage contributors to do this so that they have their own copy, and whatever code that they have on their own repository is deployable. So when you make a fork, you make changes to that issue that they've specified, and you make sure that you first read the code of conduct and how to contribute to that repository. That's very important. You have to follow their rules and their ways in how they do it. So once you make a pull request, it will show you that there's like a button that says you are ahead of whatever repo that you forked. So once you make a pull request, it will send a message to the owners of the repository, and once they see that you followed the guidelines correctly, everything is all right, then they'll make a pull request, and it will count as part of your contribution to Hacktoberfest. So in this case, if you haven't registered, you have now till the 1st of October to register for 4 pull requests to count. But this time around, unlike last year, you have to watch out for a specific group. I'll just read on the participation details. So the last three, in fact, are the most important. That says your pull request will count towards your participation if they are in a repository with the Hacktoberfest topic, and once they have been merged, approved by a maintainer, or labeled as Hacktoberfest, accepted. So people had concerns whether you had to find a repository that says Hacktoberfest specifically, but the other rule that says additionally, any pull request with the Hacktoberfest accepted label submitted to any public GitHub repository with or without the Hacktoberfest topic will be considered valid. So what this means is that even if you're not contributing to a repo that says initially Hacktoberfest, it has a Hacktoberfest topic, but when submitting, if it says Hacktoberfest accepted, then you're good to go, like it says on one of their rows. So yeah, that's like an overview on how to go about it.
All right, great. So yeah, as Isaac mentioned, it's not just about submitting pull requests. You have to make sure that it has the topic or label called Hacktoberfest. So look out for that. And if you want to, of course, find those open source projects, you just have to search for issues again on YouTube or on GitHub, and yeah, you have to look for those that have the Hacktoberfest topic there. Okay, so I'd like us to enter into our next section, where of course we'll also share how you can find those open source projects like in details, and also maybe share some links. So Jared, do you have any tips for finding open source projects to contribute to?
Yeah, definitely. The first one actually has already been mentioned by Isaac. So the Hacktoberfest official website has a list of open source projects that's links to the GitHub. So you can go there and check through some of the issues and see which ones you can tackle and make pull requests. Some of the projects I just mentioned online, like Twitter, Facebook, and other tech platforms, you'll see people sharing projects and all that. So check out the Hacktoberfest official website. Check Twitter for open source projects. Yeah.
All right, sweet. Great. All right. So next, we're going to enter now. You can say the Q&A section with our guests to, of course, learn about their experience with contributing to open source. So get ready, guys. Maybe we start with Isaac. So
okay.
For Isaac, how did you get into open source? And I'm going to throw this question at Gerard as well. So for both of you, how did you guys get into open source? Starting with Isaac.
So for me, I got into open source sometime in 2018. I had attended a meetup by Dev.to Lusaka. So basically, they were talking about contributing to open source. That was Linda, if I remember correctly. She was talking about how she started contributing to open source and how it changed her career. By contributing to open source, you also grew her skills and things like that. So I went on GitHub and started looking for what I could contribute to. I looked at what I knew what to do at the time. Basically, that time I knew mostly front end stuff. So I was like, what can I do that has to do with front end? So I found that there's a repository on GitHub called Awesome for Beginners. It has like a list of all languages that you can think of and what they call first time issues and beginner issues. I joined, I forked that repo to my own account. From there, I started looking at the list of issues that it had. Then I found this specific project on GitHub that was looking for someone to develop a front-end interface. They already had a backend, which was written in Ruby, but they didn't have a front-end. So they were like, as long as you know HTML, CSS, JavaScript, then you can start contributing. Just claim this issue, comment in the issue section. I commented. There was even a rough mock-up and a sketch on what they were looking for. They said they didn't want whoever is contributing to the project to use any framework, whether it's Bootstrap, Material, or any CSS framework. They just said you have to go pure HTML and CSS. So that was a bit of a challenge because I was so used to using Bootstrap and all these frameworks. So I was like, okay, this is like a challenge that I can take up. From there on, I started working on it. I made some mistakes, and the project maintainers were like, okay, this is how we go about it. This is our code of conduct. I didn't even know how to work with Ruby, but I saw that there were parts that I understood which were in JavaScript and in HTML. So I only touched those parts which I understood, and basically I got the project up and running. The owner of the project merged my pull requests, and from there on, I started contributing to the project. And a few months down the line, she basically wrote me a handwritten letter, sent me a bunch of stickers, and thanking me for contributing to her project and things like that. Then this year, she actually made me a project maintainer of the same project that I've been contributing to be in charge of front end, maintaining the front end part. So at the moment, we're in the process of transitioning the front end from using, we were using Jaco, we're now moving to using React. So that's one of the benefits of contributing to open source. Basically, it moved my career from a certain level to a different level because they were able to trust me to make me a project maintainer, which I never thought that I would be a project maintainer of any project anytime soon. So that was like something great. So it does have great benefits when it comes to contributing to open source. So yeah, that's pretty much my 2 cents.
All right, sweet. Thanks for that contribution. So the same question to Gerard is, how did you get into open source?
Yeah, so it was actually 2019 when I actually started contributing to open source. I just used to be curious about what open source is, and by that time I was university, and university open source wasn't talked that much. But when I started attending Dev.to Lusaka meetups, that's when I started hearing about much of open source, and I was really curious to contribute. So there was DevCon coming up. So the website was actually being prepared for the event, for the forthcoming event. So DevCon is a developer conference that happens every year in Osaka. So that's how I found myself looking for issues on that particular repository. And lucky enough, I found something very small. It was like just adding the button to to purchase a ticket. So I gave it a shot. I didn't have much information about how to contribute, but lucky enough, the maintainers were were very helpful and guided me throughout the pull request until it got merged. And I was so excited by then because I didn't actually believe I was going to be in open source and be able to make that possible. Yeah, so that's how my pull request was made, and I was added to the list of contributors. So I was excited to see my picture there that time. Then I gained some courage to actually go out and look for other open source projects, because the DevCon Zambia was a local website, so I was actually interested in contributing to a different repository from outside Zambia. Yeah, so that's how I found myself in open source, and it's been a pretty interesting and fun journey. Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for that. We were having a bit of a challenge on the audio, but I was able to get your feedback from there. I'm also going to maybe turn off my cam just to make sure that it's not I'm not causing any latency on my end. So yeah, yeah, we're gonna proceed on to the next question. Sambwa, are you there? Okay, I think we might have lost Sambwa there, but I'll just proceed. So, same question again to both of our guests is how is your experience working on open source? So we've got to learn a bit about how you got into open source, but so far, how's been your experience working on open source projects? So again, I'll maybe start now this time with Gerard, and then Isaac next.
Cool. My experience has pretty been exciting. So the project that I've been actively contributing to right now is transitioning from using Ruby to React, Gatsby, and GraphQL. So the interesting part is most of the technologies that were used from the previous technologies, from the previous project to the other one, were not really are not really projects I'm familiar with. So it's pretty much been a learning experience for me. I found myself contributing to projects that the whole technology in the project is new to me, and just getting there and following some of the instructions that are there, and that's one thing that is very helpful when you're contributing to open source. Read the docs, the contributing guide, and ask questions whenever you're not clear. So I think that's one thing that has helped me soldier on in open source and made some significant contribution. So it's pretty much been an exciting journey.
Great. So maybe I'll pass that same question to Isaac. So how's been your experience so far contributing to open source?
So far contributing to open source, it's been great. So like I mentioned, I've been contributing to, and so far I'm contributing to 2 projects on GitHub, which the 2 invited me to join their organizations due to the contributions that I made for them. Last month we had a sprint. Basically, it was a virtual sprint where we were contributing to different open source projects. There were 14 open source projects. It was more like a hackathon. It was for 2 days. On the 2nd and on the 3rd of September, we shared ideas and different things. I worked with different teams, different people from all over the world, not just coders, also worked with UX designers, information architects, and people who have all these different skills. So what that taught me was that when it comes to open source, basically, it's not just about you learning how to code. There are other areas where people need different skills, or where you need different skills. This is where the whole essence and spirit of working in a team comes in, because you can't just have all coders on a project. You also need other people who have different skill sets to be able to guide you to say, this is what you have to do in terms of how you're going to structure your information. This is what you're going to do in terms of how you're going to design your user interface and things like that. So it's been an amazing journey. so far, I'm enjoying contributing to open source, and I'm hoping to even contribute to bigger projects and bigger code bases. So that's pretty much my experience so far.
All right, great. Nice. So let me pause to get into our next question. So I think this one you might have already answered. So the projects that you have been contributing to, so I've heard that. So I'll go on to the next one, which is why would you recommend someone to contribute to open source? Okay, starting with Isaac this time. Why would you recommend someone to contribute to open source?
So why you should contribute to open source? I guess it's a question that's in a lot of people's minds who've never contributed to open source and are thinking why they should contribute. So one of the reasons I can give is that as a developer, when you're basically growing your skills, or in as much as you've been coding for some time and people don't know what you can do, the best way for people to know and discover what you can do is contributing to a project that's out there. And by you contributing to a project, you're actually going to give back to the community because there are a lot of open source tools that we use. A very good example of one software that we use is VS Code. Almost all of us use VS Code for our day-to-day coding, and that's an open source project that's being maintained by thousands of developers. So the best thing you can do is also not necessarily contribute to VS Code, but to some other project out there on GitHub that needs your help, because you find that project maintainers are usually doing that for free. It's not like they are getting paid or anything like that. Most of them are not getting paid. So they need contribution from people like us who are able to push the project forward. And apart from that, it allows you to grow professionally as a developer in terms of your skill sets and how you relate on a team. Because let's face it, when you're working for a professional software development company or any development company, you are going to be on a team. You're not going to be working solo like you do on your own personal project. So you having that exposure of contributing to open source projects, it's going to give you that mindset and open up your mind that this is how people work in a team, and it's also going to help you learn about other people's code bases. By looking at other people's code bases, it makes you see some things that you are lacking and some areas where you need to improve and things like that. So those are the reasons that I can say are very important when it comes to open source. And also exposure. When you work on open source projects, you get that exposure. When someone finds out that, oh, you're able to do this, it's easy for them to recommend you to someone who's hiring or someone like that. Yeah. So those are my topics in terms of why you should contribute to an open source project.
All right, sweet. I'll pass that question next to Gerard.
Open source is fun. Open source is a great opportunity to learn new technology, to learn how to collaborate in a team. So if you're not into open source, it's high time you got in. People have gotten jobs through open source. You get to learn a lot of stuff. If you want to learn a technology like React or any other, look for an open source project that is using that. That's the best way to learn, and like just going to watch a tutorial and whatnot. So you get to learn best coding practices. So most open source projects, you find that maintainers have like a coding standard. You can't just push any kind of code. Your code has to be standard. So you get to learn best coding practices while contributing to open source. So it's a great opportunity to learn how to collaborate, how to use a certain technology. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we just about getting into the questions that we're asking our guests. So maybe for the previous question, I can ask Joe Bryan and Samba, maybe your experience with open source. So a question that we asked the guests before, but I'll throw it at you guys. What's been your experience like with open source? Maybe starting with Samba.
Okay. Personally, contributing to open source, I haven't really been big on that, but the few times that I've done it, I can say it's given me some sort of sense of accomplishment because open source is, or most of the projects that are there are usually stuff that you haven't really worked on. And you know how cumbersome it is to actually edit someone's code, but once you start, it gives you that feeling of accomplishment, like I actually did something to this project, and it actually exposes you to a lot of new technical doings of how you go about different projects. Just as Isaac and Gerard mentioned, it gives you more experience when it comes to coding. And yeah, for me, open source, I can just tie it to work experience. It improves your work experience and gives you some feeling of accomplishment.
So, probably our last question, and this is probably the biggest question, is how can, so I'm pretty sure you both know about the prizes that are there for the Hacktoberfest. So you can win a cool T-shirt. I believe you can also, instead of getting a T-shirt, I think they can plant a tree instead of the T-shirt. I saw it somewhere, so yeah,
Yeah.
maybe I can from the guests. Yeah, is that true?
Yes, yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but say in I was like 2018 or the time when we had mostly in-person meetups, and it was almost a collector's item to get a T-shirt. So those were good times when at least you can get a T-shirt. So if you're looking to get a T-shirt, I think I would like a cool T-shirt for this Hacktoberfest. I haven't yet had one, even though I think
Mm.
last year I managed to submit all the pull requests. So the question for the guests, do you know the best courier for you to receive that T-shirt? Because sometimes you find maybe you use a carrier and maybe it takes forever for it to reach. So from your experience, what would be maybe the best that someone can try to use to get to get a T-shirt?
So the default one is DHL, but I'm not sure what alternatives could be better. I think Isaac can chip in on that.
Okay, so if you don't want to pay for any shipping at all, you can use the default address, which uses DHL as the courier. But if you're willing to cough up a few bucks, then you can use iShop. They're pretty fast in terms of them delivering your package. You get it like in 2 weeks coming from the
All right,
US.
that's okay. That's okay. So DHL,
Yeah.
yeah, DHL is an option.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So that's how you can get your T-shirt, and you have to be very specific here. If you're going to use the other one for DHL, the challenge that's there is that in most cases they forget to put the phone number. So what usually happens is that if you've been using the post office on a regular basis, they actually have your name, so they'll basically pull up your number. But if you haven't, chances are it will get lost. You would have to basically go and look for it yourself. You check up with them and ask them if any package arrived for you and things like that. The safer method is using iShop or any of these other couriers such as .com, Mercury. They will basically have all your details and whatnot. So they'll phone you in if and when your package arrives.
So yeah, thanks for those answers. So that's pretty much it about Hacktoberfest. We hope that we can have a lot of engagement from the local community for people trying to contribute to open source. I'll ask our guests as well as our hosts to maybe send some of the links that they feel projects that maybe someone can contribute to open source, and then we'll share them probably on YouTube, but also maybe on other social media handles for people to get into Hacktoberfest. So yeah, I'll take this moment maybe for any last words from our guests and our hosts to share with our listeners?
All I can say is let's get into open source. If you're not there, don't be scared to start. It's a very welcoming community, and happy Hacktoberfest to everyone.
All right, sweet. Isaac.
So for me, what I can say is you don't need to know everything about a programming language for you to start contributing to a project on GitHub, because that's the misconception that's usually there, that you need to know almost everything about a programming language. I'll give a very good example using myself. When it comes to CSS, HTML, JavaScript, I don't know everything. I only know a few things, but I went in and started contributing to the project. And the guys were like, okay, great, you're able to do this. How about you join our organization? They sent me an invite. I was like, I'm a beginner though, like you're doing fine. And then they were like, okay, great. That's how I joined. So you don't have that fear of saying, I do not know much about this. You learn as you are doing. That's how programming works. Learn while you're doing. It doesn't work like watch tutorial. You'll be forgetting if you keep watching too many tutorials, and you'll be stuck in what they call tutorial. So go out there and let's start doing.
I would just like to encourage everyone listening to dive into open source contribution, just as Gerard and Isaac have said. I think once you start this, you will never be the same. You improve in every aspect of your coding life. So I think we can step into this and to appreciate every step of the way. Thank you.
I think almost everything has been said, and my only concern was that the fear on people not finding out where the projects are, where they can contribute to. But you've already highlighted that you're going to share the projects, the list of projects where they can just select, pick, or work on. So just be on the lookout for that. And then all the encouragement, I think, has been said mostly by Isaac, where I say you don't have to know everything to jump into learning or contributing.
Yeah, as mentioned, thanks again for joining in. Apologies for any connectivity or sound issues. It's something, of course, we're trying to work on as we move towards maybe virtual meetups. So yeah, we can't get it right the first time, but I think we're getting closer. Again, thanks to our guests and our hosts for joining in. We'll share some of I think we'll make like a Google Doc where we can share some of these things for you to learn of where you can contribute from. All right, so we'll see you all soon, and thanks for watching. All right, guys, we'll see you next time online.
All right, thank you for hosting us.
Bye.
All right, bye.